Terrific. I'm going to introduce our first moderator for our sports panel, and then she will take over the show. And our moderator is Erin Sharoni. Erin Sharoni is the co-host of CNBC Sports Biz Game On with Darren Rovell, which airs Thursdays at 7 on the NBC Sports Network. Erin made her debut in the sports broadcasting world in 2010 as the St. John's basketball sideline reporter and was a host on the television show Red Storm Report. Born and raised in New York City, they've got a football team there too, I hear, maybe even more than one. Erin's passion for sports runs deep as an outspoken fan and an avid athlete. Erin is a former U.S. Junior Olympic certified swim coach, personal trainer, dancer, and fitness competitor. Erin is currently a 2012 brand ambassador for Fila. In 2010, she was selected as a model to appear in a national advertising campaign for Fila athletic apparel and was featured in online, print, and in-store ads across the U.S. Prior to making the transition to a full-time career in sports broadcasting and TV hosting, acting, and modeling, Erin worked in finance for 5 years, starting her Wall Street career at Bear Stearns & Company. Erin holds a BA with honors from Wesleyan University. Isn't that where Coach Belichick is from? Oh, it just hit me. And resides in her native city of New York. Please join me in welcoming Erin to the stage.
Hello. I would not have written such a long bio if I knew you were going to read the whole thing. I thought it was for their programs, so I apologize for that. It wasn't meant to be self-aggrandizing. Good afternoon. I commend you all for being here rather than the beach, which is where I would be if I wasn't here. But I took the Acela up here this morning and made it in one piece, and thank you for having me. I think it's actually quite funny. I was invited by a friend of mine, Peter Stringer, who knows about my insane New York fandom. I'm very outspoken on Twitter about it, so I just think it's ironic that our panelists are all Boston sports social media managers, so perhaps we can have some discussions about that. Without further ado, I will introduce everybody. Peter Stringer is the Senior Director of Interactive Media for the Boston Celtics. Show them your ring, Peter. That's nicer than most wedding rings.
Idea.
Christy Berkery, Social Media Manager for the New England Patriots. And Megan Ryan, Marketing and Social Media Specialist for the Boston Red Sox. They have a few championships, I hear. I'm a Mets fan, so it's sad. Anyway, moving on. We have some prepared questions, but I think I was supposed to tell you what my background is first, but I think that was done already, so I don't know that anyone needs to hear about that. You guys can ask me questions if you're interested as the panel progresses, but I will let each of these fine people introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about what they do at their respective teams.
All right, hello guys, I'm Megan Ryan. I am a social media marketing coordinator for the Boston Red Sox. I've been there for about 2 years now. Started in June 2010 as a summer intern after graduating from Trinity College. I have a BA in economics. I live in Malden, Massachusetts, and I grew up in Newburyport, so longtime Red Sox fan and Boston sports fan. Currently, I'm responsible for day-to-day digital content for the Red Sox. So both posting and executing contests, giveaways, fan information, as well as working on a lot of our larger marketing initiatives, community initiatives, a little bit of everything. So we're happy to talk about all that we do.
Hi, I'm Christy Berkery. I'm the social media manager for the Patriots. This will be my 6th season there, although we only recently created the social media position. So I've always been in PR, so I still handle a lot of the day-to-day player access and media relations activities, but my primary job is all of our social media. So I handle the day-to-day content, and then I oversee all of our other organizational accounts. So the Gillette Stadium account, Patriot Place account, our museum account, kind of as an advisor, but mostly the content for our day-to-day accounts. I am from Chicago. I actually went to Boston College, which I try not to mention here too much, but I went to BU for grad school. So I am a BU alum. And then I started with the Patriots in 2007.
Great. Peter Stringer, Senior Director of Interactive Media for the Celtics. I've been there, this was my 7th season just gone by, and so I've kind of been there to see it through from when it was just Celtics.com and websites to now, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, you name it, YouTube. So all of that stuff, we're working on our mobile app right now, and so pretty much anything digital is under my supervision, and we've really just, I think the biggest thing I've seen is just the explosive growth, one thing, but just the diversity of platforms. It just seems like every year there's something new that we're trying to tackle, and I don't think that'll be any different this year. So I think for us, really, from the Celtics standpoint, we want to be in all the different places that Celtics fans are looking to consume content. And so that's really what the goal is for us, is really to be wherever you guys are following our team.
Does anyone use Pinterest? I mean, we're going to talk about that later. I think it's fascinating that the Celtics might be in it because, as far as I know, it's like young and old women with recipes, but that's another another topic. We're moving on to the first question that's actually listed here. How do you keep up with the constant demand for social in a sports-centric city, especially when organizations are reluctant to create a full social media team? And in fact, from what I understand, a lot of organizations are even cutting their teams or downsizing. So anyone can feel free to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can say, on its simplest level, sports teams spend millions of dollars on professional athletes. They don't spend it on me, and certainly people that come work for me. Yeah, we're very lean, and I'm sure that's probably the case with the Red Sox, Patriots, and if the Bruins were here, I'm sure they would say the same thing as well. We are kind of in that phase where we are starting to actually staff up and build up, but certainly you're talking about entry-level positions and salaries that are frankly probably well below market, where you would, compared to what you might make at a consumer goods brand or a financial services brand or something along those lines. So yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge, obviously, is getting the organizational buy-in, and because as it stands right now, it's free to have a Twitter account, it's free to have a Facebook account. Now, that's starting to change if you look at what Facebook is doing. I think eventually they're going to get to the point where they're going to start charging brands big money to do it. But ultimately, I think it's, proving the case that it's something that's worthwhile for the organizations to invest in beyond just the salary for the, the digital marketing manager. That's really kind of where I think a lot of teams are right now, especially in this city where there's such an appetite for sports.
Yeah, for us, we have a little bit of a different relationship. So I'm the only full-time person at the Red Sox that's posting social media content, but we also are in partnership with Major League Baseball Advanced Media. Baseball is the only league that has this partnership. Essentially, Major League Baseball Advanced Media controls the digital rights to all 30 MLB clubs, and they have a staff. They're based in Chelsea, so I work in partnership with them on our content. And the great thing about that is they're staffed until 2 a.m. So we're out in Seattle right now, West Coast games. They're able to post highlights and things like that for late night games when we're not in town. So I have a working relationship with their staff there, but I'm the only full-time person at the Sox. So and there's definitely no shortage of content with 162 games. That really is what drives your content. But then it's the Boston market, fans are always wanting more, and we're always looking to provide more. So there's never a shortage of information to be sharing.
I think the big thing that all teams and probably brands in general are facing, and I'm sure it's on your bingo, is monetization. Now that we are getting, it's got to be in there, right? It's got to be there. But now that some teams are starting to get social media managers, and you are starting to get a little traction with teams and brands, giving you a little leeway, it's proving your worth and proving your value, which is a lot harder to do than it might seem. So a lot of my bandwidth is put into, how can I actually help the company make money off this? Obviously, content drives everything, and that's what fans want. But internally, a lot of that struggle is proving your value and proving that the brand can make some kind of quantifiable, whether it's money or some other kind of income through the social media. And then from there, you can grow out a little bit and maybe add on those entry-level staff to help.
Yeah, no question. Ticket sales is something that I think all sports teams are looking at. How are they going to start driving ticket sales through Facebook, through Twitter, through these platforms? For us, Erin, you mentioned Pinterest. For us, merchandise, we look at that as a potential area of growth. We have a bunch of different Pinterest boards featuring, our women's gear, our men's gear, jerseys. Celtics jewelry, nothing quite like this, but all those
special.
different.
That one's special.
Yeah, But certainly we're looking at monetization. Again, there's that word. Clearly, not just direct monetization, but also indirectly. So how do we get our fans out of social media networks into our database, and then start, we're going to get them into an email program. So hey, maybe they buy 1 ticket a year. Let's get them to buy a 3-game pack, a 5-game pack, a 10-game pack, and then ultimately get them up to the top of the ladder, which is the season ticket. That's the holy grail for a sports marketer, really.
Yeah, I mean, as the co-host of a sports business show, a show that's entirely focused on sports, which inherently is a business. A trade is a business, endorsements a business, teams are a business. The bottom line is making money, right? So, I mean, we hear that too from whatever CEO we're talking to, who's just signed an athlete for an endorsement deal, or whatever GM we're talking to. I mean, as long as I think social media, it can be proved that it's monetizable. I swear I'm smart. I went to Wesleyan.
What happened to BU? Weren't you going to come to BU?
Yeah, actually, thanks for calling me out. I did. I got a full ride to the BU School of Communications, and I stupidly chose the school that didn't give me any money. So that's a regret. But anyway, I digress. Thanks, Peter, for bringing that up.
You got
It's a great school. I'd lost my train of thought. Yeah, so I'm curious to know if at your organizations, you guys use a certain set of analytics. Do you outsource it? I mean, we even work with some companies, Darren and I, to get Twitter information. So I know that they're out there. Is that something that the teams see as useful?
We use a variety of tools, both free tools and some tools that are provided by Major League Baseball. So we use MLB Fanalytics, which is how we're getting all of our revenue information, all of our click-throughs, all of our retweets, all of our likes. We've already doubled our revenue as compared to last year on social media, starting to use it more for sales, and that's able to tie back into our RedSox.com pages. We just are able to append those links in our posts. But I don't have a true social media tool that I would say is my #1 go-to that gives me everything that I want. I use a variety of different tools, I think, to get that information. Be curious to hear what you guys use.
Yeah, the NFL partners with Buddy Media, so we have access to a lot of analytics through that, but a lot of it is just different free tools online and kind of, figuring out what works best for your brand. And honestly, internally, a lot of our best, analytics are just the case studies that we do. If we can run one promotion and say, we got 30,000 people to enter this sweepstakes for a Tom Brady jersey that cost us $85, and 70% of those were new to our database, we can kind of develop a value based on our own internal analytics. So a lot of it is just kind of what our team already kind of has in place for that.
Yeah, I mean, going out and spending $20,000 a year, $30,000 a year on an analytics tool is probably not going to deliver any sort of ROI. Is that on the list, ROI? Yeah, oh, there it is. All right, great. And I think honestly the best tool is really honestly a human resource who is spending all day and all night thinking about what you're doing in social and kind of what pays off, what doesn't. And certainly you're going to be tracking, click-throughs on your Bitly links. You're going to be tracking, shares on your Facebook posts, those types of analytics. I'm not the type who really necessarily wants to be generating reports every single week about, our Bitly links our click-throughs are up 5%. At the end of the day, does that really mean anything? A lot of it obviously revolves around how well your team is playing, to be honest. I mean, if you look at our website traffic, for instance, you can clearly see that when the Celtics win, the next day the website gets crushed, and when we lose, it doesn't. And, fans already know kind of what happened in the game. They're looking for extra content. And so clearly, again, as we went through our playoff run, again, you could see the likes on Facebook increase in terms of our page. Our Twitter handle did just an absolute, had a big growth cycle over that 6-week period from when the playoffs started till we were unceremoniously released from the playoff competition by the Miami Heat. Still very sore about that one. But anyway, so yeah, I think, there's definitely a lot of different metrics that you're going to be looking at, but ultimately I still think you need a human eye to really guide these decisions that you're going to make with regard to kind of what makes the most sense. And I don't think there's any one tool that can really help you do that.
Yeah, and I'd argue at this point that it's more of a a must-have. I mean, it's not even really a question. I mean, how much money you put into it is one thing, but you can't not have it. And the teams that do a good job get recognized for it, as we'll see later, because I have a question.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a gold rush out there too. I mean, every day, I mean, you guys all go through the same thing, but we get phone calls, 3 or 4 a day, emails. Hey, we've got the latest and greatest social media tool to help you grow your audience, to help you measure your impact. And, it's just nonstop, relentless, and every time.
Every single buzzword that's on your bingo.
How many vendors, are any vendors here today? It's okay, you can put your hands up.
Trash them.
Wow, all right, wow, this is gonna be great. We're not gonna get pitched at the end of this.
Moving on to a question that I think probably everybody is pretty interested in, because it's a fun topic. How does your organization handle the social media accounts of individual players in terms of promotion, guidance, or censorship? What's the protocol for a rogue tweeter? Because I know you have those.
Probably the same rules that Darren has for you, I don't know.
Hey. I keep him in line.
I mean, I can say for us, we certainly don't control what our players put on Twitter. We try to give them guidelines, we try to give them help, but when you've got somebody like Paul Pierce has 2 million followers, and obviously is a savvy veteran of the NBA, there's an expectation there, obviously, for his own brand. He's trying to maintain his own brand, and so clearly, it's usually the younger guys who are fresh out of college. First thing I did, after I saw who we drafted is, go out, all right, we got to go follow these guys, make sure Fab Melo is not putting anything out there, making sure that he's conducting himself with a manner. I won't have a chance to even meet this guy until we bring him in, and I'll probably not going to knock him over the head with, hey, what's your Twitter page look like? But eventually that's something that we will get to, especially with the younger guys, and I think the leagues now are kind of realizing that there's a lot of potential PR damage on the line when these kids are tweeting and then they suddenly become NBA stars. And so, that's certainly how we look at it. And the NBA has probably been the biggest league in terms of players' adoption. So it's probably in the forefront for our league more than anyone, but certainly any team and any player, it's a possibility.
Yeah, I would second that. I don't think there was anything that we could have said to Chad Ochocinco to make him change the way he was tweeting. But this is the first year we met with our rookies coming in and kind of giving them a couple guidelines. And honestly, most of it is just appealing to their own interest in building their Twitter brand. I'm saying, I can't retweet you if when I lead people to your account, it's, every other word is F this, F that. That's not something that we as a brand can push our fans to. But if you have a clean account and if you're tweeting things that promote our brand identity, then we can help you build your brand. So that's been my kind of angle of appealing to the younger guys. Some of the older guys, like you said, you're not really going to change their way of tweeting. But I think if you get in and kind of give them those basics as they're starting with the organization, when they're still young enough to listen to you, you can kind of appeal to their self-interest that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely agree. We have 17 guys on our active roster who are on Twitter, and they've been a great bunch. Nothing that's made me lose sleep yet over what they're saying, so pretty PG content, which is great, and I'm constantly promoting their accounts. I'll mention them in any in-game highlight that I'm tweeting. Cody Ross hits a 2-run home run, I'm going to mention Cody Ross's handle. Also helping them with a lot of their charitable initiatives that they're involved with. A lot of our players have their own charities. They have ticket programs where they bring kids down for BP. We're going to get a picture of that, mention their account, mention their foundation, which in turn then helps them and also helps us, because when we go to ask David Ortiz to help us with a commercial or help us do something, he's going to be more inclined to participate because we're giving him some love and helping to promote his account. So we don't have any access to their accounts. The majority of them are run by the players themselves, which is great. A few of the bigger guys, their agents, manage their accounts, and it's not as authentic. So it's always great when the player is actually tweeting themselves. Mike Aviles tweeted a really funny photo on our flight out to Seattle the other day of Kelly Shopik asleep like this in the plane, and it's just great footage that from our club account we sort of have a no photos, no videos on planes and on team buses, but if a player's sharing that information, it's a great picture that our fans want to see. We're able to retweet that. Gives our players a little bit of personality, which is something that we're really trying to help dimensionalize our players and show who they are off the field, and I think Twitter has been a great way to do that. So far, no scary incidents. We're thinking about doing some training for our younger players. We have a new spring training complex which houses our major and minor league teams. So some of those younger guys, like you mentioned, are really our guys that are coming up recent draft picks and single A guys. We're looking to do some training next year in spring training for them.
And for well, I know how the Patriots feel about tweeting, but for the Celtics, and you can answer this as well, though, are you planning on building that sort of training component into your media training? Is it there already?
Yeah, I think the NBA does some of that, and I think probably at training camp this year, I'll probably talk to the guys. It's funny, Michael Petras, before the playoffs started, drops me an email out of nowhere. I don't even know where he got my email from, but he's like, I need 13. I think he's like, I need 30,000 followers or something. He's at like 5 or 6 or something like that. Or no, I think he wanted 3 million. I'm like Michael, like
start small.
Like, what do you want me to do to make that happen? I'm like, we can certainly retweet you here and there, but it's funny getting back to that whole like retweeting the athletes. I've kind of actually gone the other way on that, and I've really kind of resisted doing that, aside from Paul Pierce and Rondo, 2 guys who I know will kind of keep that clean, because you just don't know. We had Big Baby on our team, and he was active on Twitter, and I don't know if you guys caught what he was doing on YouTube a couple summers ago. And really just when you've got situations like that, there's nothing you can do to put that toothpaste back in the tube. Once it's out, it's out. And so from my standpoint, I feel like I kind of want to make sure that I'm really familiar with how those players are behaving, kind of what they are putting out, if they have an awareness of the idea that they can damage themselves and their reputation. And so I've been a lot more cautious about promoting our players out there that way. But I think as it continues to be something that just all the players are doing, I think that will be the expectation, that the teams will continue to kind of promote that. And obviously some of their agents have reached out to us and said, hey, can you help us with this? And from our standpoint, in a lot of cases, a guy like Paul Pierce has got 2 million followers. He can probably do a lot more for us than we can actually do for him.
Well, Stringer, there are a number of ways to get from 5,000 to 3 million followers. Just ask Kim Kardashian. On Twitter, there are ways. That's all I'm saying. Not ways that your players should use, but
players.
like you said, you got
She has different tools than I do. Let's just put it that way.
Just saying. It's a new day and age. No, but I mean, to that point, you have one shot to ruin your reputation, right? I mean, being in media, I know that you have to be very aware of it. Many shots to create it, one shot to ruin it. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of, as I hit the microphone, speaking of controversial tweeting, the Los Angeles Kings social media team got a lot of attention during the NHL playoffs for its funny, often uncensored style. To you guys, what's the ideal social media voice for a professional sports team? And also, I want to know, what did you think about the Kings Twitter account? Because I thought it was awesome.
I mean, personally, it was funny to watch, and I was a little bit jealous that ours didn't have as unique of a personality, but ultimately that, and I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the Kings social media, but it was just very irreverent, and it was funny, but it was much more aggressive than we would ever be from our account, and that personality didn't reflect our brand culture, so it's not something that would make sense from the Patriots. Even though it would be really fun to run that kind of account and have that kind of freedom, ultimately, that's not what our brand identity is. And I think that we need to have a personality on social media so that it's not just repurposing of all of our press releases and just putting it out there in kind of a boring, bland format, but it should still reflect our brand, which the LA Kings might reflect what they want their brand to be, but it definitely wasn't what we would want our brand to be. So while it was really fun and I was a little jealous of them, for us, it wouldn't make sense to be that way. I think I've seen you write about that.
Yeah, I mean, I look at, the Boston Celtics, it's pretty, generations of fans, 60 years of history. I don't want to mess that up with one tweet that I think is maybe funny in the heat of the moment and then misses the mark completely, annoys fans. We don't take shots at other teams the same way you won't see us on the Jumbotron. It's funny, you go to other arenas, and I'll travel for playoffs, and Atlanta, Miami, some teams will actually, part of their game entertainment and presentation is kind of making fun of the other team or ridiculing. That's not how we do things. And for us, it's all about the Celtics. It's not about the other team you're playing. And so, we look at it from the standpoint of, again, that rich tradition and history, 17 world championships. That's the brand. And so, sarcastic remarks and those things on our Twitter account just don't mesh with that, to your point. So we try to reflect, I'd rather speak through the voices of Doc Rivers and Danny Ainge and our legends and our stars versus just, trying to be the funny guy with the Twitter account.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. We actually had a conversation about this yesterday. Some of our executives would like us to be a little bit more edgy, but I really think that type of account does more disservice to the brand than it does to help grow the brand. It may work in LA, but it definitely wouldn't work in Boston. The Boston media, the fan scrutiny, I just don't think it's at all the same market. You know, LA might have that and it might work in LA, but it definitely wouldn't work for Boston. For the Red Sox, again, a storied franchise, Fenway Park, history. I also sort of just felt like they were stooping to the level of the fans and getting involved in the fray a little bit too much. Like, in games, sometimes they were going back and forth with fans, and they'd almost get into, you know, little battles, and it just seems like you're getting to the level of the people who are calling in and yelling on sports radio all day, and it doesn't really come across strong for your brand.
As a point of reference, people, in case you don't know what we're talking about, because I know not everybody likes hockey as much as I do, in LA, speaking of, you know, meshing with the brand, the LA media was calling the puck a ball. So that, I mean, that's sort of reflective of, like, they just had no idea what was going on. I mean, we said it on our show, the LA Kings have 1% of the Los Angeles sports market, literally 1%. So, I mean, they just
don't have
familiar
anything to
with
lose. I mean, to your point, they don't have anything to lose. And I think for us, the risk reward, I mean, there's far more risk than any reward. You know, okay, so we pick up 100,000 new Twitter followers because we're funny. All right, but are those people that actually, like, fans that, again, when you talk about monetize, ROI, all those little buzzwords we were talking about earlier, you know, you might pick up people, but you're probably going to lose them just as quickly.
Yeah, I was actually heckled on Twitter by the New Jersey Devils during the playoffs because I'm obviously a staunch Rangers fan, and I'm very vocal about it. And I forget what I tagged them in, but I said something that wasn't that obnoxious because I can't be horrible on Twitter. And they wrote back to me like something really awful, and I was like, I can't.
Like 1994, or?
No. Can you imagine if Twitter was around back then? Anyway, you guys have heard a lot from us. We would love to open it up for questions, provided that you don't try and goad us into using the buzzwords so you can win your Amazon gift card, okay?
I think we're at 2, right?
You got a couple of them.
And I think there should be, is there someone with a mic? So raise your hand if you want to talk.
Hello. My name's Anam. I'm an inbound marketing associate from HubSpot, so I do all the social media there. And you guys keep talking about Twitter a lot, but I'm wondering what your social media strategies are on Pinterest or Facebook or any of the other social sites and how you balance using all of them.
I think that's a really good question because one of the biggest decisions is just where do you spend your time. Even if you have one person who's dedicated to it, there are so many platforms out there. So our goal is essentially to be where the bulk of our fans are. There are certain, you know, applications and things that would be really cool to have, but it's not, you know, the effort that would take to maybe to do, you know, a Tumblr blog isn't worth it for how many fans we might have there. But for the Patriots, we're on Facebook, Twitter. Those are our 2 main focuses. We're on Google Plus as well, Pinterest and Instagram. So it is kind of a hard balance because it's, you know, you don't want to just repurpose the exact same information across all those platforms because a lot of times there is a big crossover with fans, and they're looking for different things at each place. But we try to focus on, you know, a small number of platforms where we think we can reach the most people and get the most out of the effort and the time that we have to spend on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of the calculus. And for us, I think that the one thing that we look at it is really about collecting data and really finding out who are the fans that are on these platforms and coming up with ways to contact them outside the confines of those platforms. As you guys know, with Facebook, the rules change every day. They're, you know, deciding what your default email is one day. They're changing, you know, how you're going to get into the news feed as a brand. And so I really look at it as at any point, Facebook can completely cut us out altogether. And so for us, it's really about collecting data from all those different platforms, get those fans into our database and learn as much as we can about them. You know, it's great to have 6.6 million Facebook fans, but if we don't know anything about them, they're not incredibly valuable to us.
Yeah, for us, we're on Twitter using that primarily for news, responding to fans. I use Twitter mostly a lot for as a customer service vehicle for the organization. We don't have a customer service team. We have Fenway ambassadors who handle inbound calls, and we have our ticket office reps who handle inbound calls, but I really use Twitter to be able to respond to fan inquiries. Someone at a game the other day asked if we could turn the speakers down in section 37 because they couldn't hear themselves think. You know, I emailed the control room, they turned the speakers down, really helping people to enhance the fan experience at Fenway Park. And if they're having issues getting their tickets online, how can I help be a service to our fans to get issues resolved? For Facebook, I primarily use that for photos and videos. We have our Red Sox Productions, which is our in-house video productions team. They produce weekly shows. We're posting all of those videos embedded on Facebook. and using our photographers' photos there. We're on Tumblr. We have a Tumblr blog that I have someone who just works games, who gets me photos for all of our social media platforms, so I have him focused on Tumblr. We're on Pinterest. We haven't really developed a strategy for that and haven't exactly promoted the account at all, so working to develop that, but it is big with merchandise. I think that's a key opportunity there, and driving content back to RedSox.com. We also are on Google Plus, using that for search engine optimization, so posting game previews, pitching matchups, all of our draft picks, things that people would be searching for, more newsworthy items were there. We don't have Instagram. Unfortunately, this is part of our relationship with Major League Baseball Advanced Media.
How's that working out for you, by the way?
That's a whole nother offline discussion. So basically all of our content has to drive back to RedSox.com, since Instagram is primarily mobile. MLB.com is building out pages for all the 30 clubs to house their Instagram photos. So we're hoping to launch an Instagram account the second half of the season. We'll keep you posted.
So I have a follow-up question for Peter. Earlier in the panel, you were talking about, when we were talking about analytics, and you were talking about how you don't completely see the value of like higher click-through rates, or this one got that much clicks, et cetera. But when you're deciding which social channels you're going to use and which one you should be spending most of your time on, isn't it valuable to have a sort of analytics set in place where you can see apples to apples which social network is benefiting you the most?
Well, I think they're also different, that you can't necessarily compare them in some manner. So, you know, what success might look like on Twitter is going to be different than it would be on Facebook. Google Plus, you know, we were one of the first teams to get there because, again, I think from a search engine standpoint, you're going to see Google make them more and more important. And I look at it more as like a phone book listing for us. But to that point, from the standpoint of actually how many real human beings are using Google Plus, it's arguable.
5.
And are active.
Right, and so honestly,
And they all work at Google.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no evidence to suggest people are actually using it at all, and for the most part. And so, you know, we've actually, I won't say we've abandoned Google Plus, but there's certainly not the activity there we had when it first launched. I do still think it'll become important down the line, but not from the standpoint of users. And I think people mistook it to be something like Facebook. I really don't think it's anything close. So along those lines, I don't want to you know, understate the importance of metrics and analytics, and we spend a lot of time trying to wrap our minds around what works and what doesn't work. I just think that the platforms are all very different, and it's in some ways impossible to compare them to each other in terms of measuring success across all the different platforms. So we certainly keep an eye on it, but like I said, you know, for me, I just felt like it was diminishing returns on what we were doing on Google Plus, and so we've kind of backed off that quite a bit, because I just don't think the regular content updates are reaching people en masse, and certainly we haven't seen any tickets selling through that platform at all either. So as we're comprised of just, again, a small staff, I have one full-time report working for me and a few part-timers doing things like video and other things. We just don't have the manpower to tackle something like that.
I'm actually curious. I have a question for the audience, so wake up, people. And I feel a particular way about using these tools for building my own brand, but I know Facebook is important from an advertiser standpoint, from a larger organization standpoint. I think it's annoying. It changes all the time. They don't explain themselves. I think they're kind of, I've had this argument with Stringer in the past. You know, I think they're like antiquated. My grandmother was on Facebook, and I'm like, all right, enough. So I would like to see, by show of hands, how many of you use Twitter and how many of you use Facebook? So if you use Twitter, please raise your hand. Very good. And if you use Facebook consistently, please raise your hand. Interesting. Now raise your hand if you use Twitter more than Facebook. I like you guys. Now raise your hand if you use Facebook more than Twitter. It's almost split. So I think it's going to shift, because I think Twitter is a much more organic, authentic way of communicating and expressing yourself. I understand how from a large organization standpoint it's more difficult, but I'm wondering if you guys see that shift too. And then we'll go back to the audience. Sorry.
I think some of it is the demographics that's shifting, because we're still growing pretty consistently on Facebook. When you look at our numbers, we're still big in the males 13 to 35, but one of our fastest growing facets is women 45 to 55. So it's shifting a little bit older, and you are reaching a maybe slightly different demographic, but I mean, I think it's going to be there. Like we said, they're constantly changing. They'll change it again, and it'll be something else in a couple of years. But we're definitely seeing a shift in the demographic that we're dealing with there.
I think it's interesting for us that our executives spend a lot more time paying attention to what's on Twitter than they do on Facebook. And most of them are actually, if you look at a lot of just corporate executives, don't spend any time on Facebook at all.
Yeah.
And so from a brand perspective, what we're doing in that place isn't nearly as important to them as when it hits their BlackBerry, you know, from a text that the Celtics tweet goes out. They're paying attention to everything we're putting out on Twitter. And so I spend a lot more time really being concerned about what I tweet, you know, everything from a typo to just inaccurate information about who's in the game, who's not going to play, those types of things, because I know there are eyeballs on it above my head, and it's important.
Yeah, and I think that the fact that Twitter is a non-reciprocal relationship, and that if you do put something out there, it can spread like wildfire, whereas Facebook, it doesn't happen. So probably to your point about people paying attention. Questions? The mic runner will come choose one of you.
You can stand up.
That's gonna be tough. All right, they're asking me to stand up, sorry. Okay, come on. Hi, Bessie King. I work locally, teach social media, and I'm a digital journalist. 2 questions. So the first is, upon hearing all these things you do, you have Google+, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, at a point where I'm sick of it. You know, I just want to focus on 1 or 2 things. And it sounds like you have to spread yourself across the board. So question number 1 is, how do you know when enough is enough? Where do you choose, or are you going to choose just certain channels of communication rather than try everything once or keep it there like the Google Plus profile, because who knows if it's going to get big or not? And second question is, for my students, you know, you started as an internship that developed into a job, but I don't know if you literally do this 24 hours a day. So what can young adults that are expecting to be social marketers, which is becoming an industry now, a job, do or know if it's not analytics, if it's going to be tweeting all day, if it's going to be, you know, knowing all these systems to use, should they be prepared for, you know? So those are the 2 questions.
I mean, I can tell you my background was in journalism here, class of '98, Boston University. Go Terriers. But you know, obviously, when I got into the business, it was about websites and website publishing, and that kind of transitioned for us into the social media space. But I think the 2 things that really now, obviously having that journalism degree helps a lot, because it just informs you in terms of knowing how to report stories, knowing kind of the rules of the road in terms of journalism. And Twitter is so inextricably tied with journalism at this point. And any journalist is using that platform. So I think that's one part of it, the analytics part of it, the metrics part. Anybody who's working in digital marketing, you know, the whole point is you can measure this stuff. And I think that's what makes it so powerful and why it resonates with corporate America so much. And so from those 2 standpoints, I think those are the 2 biggest fields that people need to be in. And certainly just because you tweet all, you know, you can't just put on your resume, oh yeah, I use Twitter, I use Facebook. That does not necessarily qualify you for a digital marketing job. So I think those are probably the 2 biggest areas that students who want to get into that business should really pay attention to.
And just as far as all the different platforms, I mean, I would argue with us, we're on 5 platforms, and I would say that we have chosen a few compared to the vast number of ones that are out there. But you're right, you never quite know when too much is, you know, when it's too much. We've done a lot of stuff. We kind of mirror our content on Facebook and Google+, because the feedback we've gotten from people is that it is 2 pretty distinct audiences, and we try to adjust it a little bit. Like she had said, for, you know, Twitter is more news-based, Facebook and Google+ is a little bit fluffier, a little bit more features-based for us. And we just listen to what fans are saying. Like people have said, this is kind of a customer service tool now. So we see when I check every time I post something on the same sites to see if we get that feedback. If I just saw this on Google+, or I just saw this on Twitter, and I'm finding that we aren't getting a lot of that feedback. So we're continuing to kind of mix and match, and there is some duplication across platforms. I don't know that we have the resources to have 100%, or just the content to have 100% new content on each platform, but you're presenting it in a slightly different way for each, you know, each user base. So we have a photo on Facebook, and it's a little bit different when we upload it to Instagram and we put that filter on, and that's kind of what the people on Instagram are looking for. And then we might post that on a different way to one of our Pinterest boards and tie it in a little bit differently. So there definitely is some crossover. We're not 100% different in each category, but a lot of it's just listening to the fans and, like you said, you know, trying to figure out when too much, you know, when it is too much, or what they're still, if there's another outlet that they really want us to be on that we're not, then we'll listen to that and adapt to that.
I think the amount of content, too, that you're publishing can vary across the platform. So we could tweet 15 times a day, and people aren't going to, for the most part, get sick of it because it's moving so quickly, whereas I'm going to post a couple photos of each game or for the homestand, and you can kind of space out how much you're publishing in each platform. If I had to choose one platform and only one platform, I would choose Twitter. I just think it provides the most opportunities for us to engage, to sell, to communicate. I think that would be my choice. But I see a value to being everywhere, and I think the fan response, there are fans that want to consume the information on each of those platforms, so I do think there's a real value to being there. In terms of what to tell your students, I think sports is a little bit of a different industry. You know, we're working games, nights, weekends. We have 81 home games. I'm there every home game. You know, you pretty much are 24/7. So I think that industry as a whole is a little bit different, and you kind of have to realize it is a little bit more of a lifestyle than a job. You know, which is great though. I get to go to Fenway Park every single day. I eat lunch on the Green Monster, but you're there. You know, you're there summer, nights, weekends. But I do think writing is really key. And effective communication, both oral and written communication, is essential to that field.
Yeah, sports, I think, is inherently the perfect stage for social media because of the nature of it.
Yeah.
Social media is timely, it allows you to connect, you get quick information. I mean, that is sports. So I think, to your point, it is a little bit of a different beast.
Hello, my name is Wayne Kurtzman. I do social for a Fortune 100 company and teach at the University of Tennessee. The question is, what steps do you take to evaluate a new platform, specifically the terms of service, your agreements to the league, and the bang for the buck?
I mean, in terms of just the legal requirements, we probably should look into those a little more deeply than we honestly do. I'm sure I think MLBAM probably does because they're doing it for 30 teams, and that's certainly a concern. There's no question. I think for one of the things you're looking at now as these platforms evolve. Twitter. We just did a deal with a company called Mass Relevance at the beginning of this season, and they're a Twitter curation platform. And so the idea is, for instance, like we used it the other night at our NBA draft party where we had fans tweeting in against the Celtics talk hashtag, and then actually pulling some of those tweets into the 360 ring on the balcony in the building, something we'd like to do next year in the game. But it took us an entire year to come to an agreement with this Mass Relevance company, who is the official Twitter vendor for this curation platform. And there's a bunch of other companies that do the same thing. But it really, the whole argument revolved around how Twitter would integrate advertising. And to this point, they still haven't done it. But it's clearly on the horizon, and it's something, as all these platforms, and you talk about, Facebook, you talk about Instagram being sold for $1 billion. All right, well, where's the revenue model behind that? And so all these companies and social media platforms are trying to figure out, a consistent revenue model as Facebook goes public, and they begin to have shareholders and have to answer to, quarterly updates. That becomes really important. And so for us, we as teams and leagues have to start paying a lot more attention to what exactly we're agreeing to, who owns that content, how it's being used. But I'll be honest, in the past, it's really been, here's a new platform, let's jump on it and, protect ourselves from the standpoint of like not letting some other entity go grab Celtics. For us, from an Instagram standpoint, really as soon as that came out, we were early to get there. And as new platforms pop up, I'll typically go and grab a username just to make sure, drop an anchor. If it does get big, at least we have a presence there and an official presence there that is distinguished by fans, because you will have imposters. But it's something, again, it comes with the territory. It's just, as this stuff evolves, you really just have to be dialed into it more than anything. But clearly, the bigger it gets, the more lawyers get involved, no question.
Yeah, and I think like regardless of social media or any product or service, you still have to look at who your customers are, who's buying and who you're trying to sell to. At the end of the day, it's no different than anything else. And I think sometimes that falls by the wayside and people tend to think that it's different because it is digital, but it's absolutely not. I mean, to your point about, women between the ages of 45 and 55, being interested in the Patriots, they're probably using Pinterest and Facebook and not Twitter. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and I think we tend to forget that, just because we put stuff out on Twitter doesn't mean we're reaching the entire Celtics audience. And that's something that I think about a lot, is it just, all of our fans aren't on Facebook. They're not all on Twitter. They're not all on Instagram. And so you can't just assume that just because you put things there. We also have this thing called Celtics.com. I know it's kind of old and everything, but the internet's still a pretty big deal. And I honestly, like, there are times when I'm like, oh yeah, that also has to go on the website. And you know, it's just kind of one of those things that we've gotten so far down this path that, you know, again, you can forget about this stuff. Like I said, Google Plus, it's almost kind of completely fallen off my radar, and I have to kind of remind myself, oh yeah, we have that Google Plus page that we're supposed to be using.
No one's using Google. Does anyone use Google Plus? Please raise your hand. See?
Yeah.
I know. It's,
All right.
Okay, next question.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Hi, I'm Adam Engel. I do social media in my spare time. I had time off at work yesterday, and so that's how I got a ticket here, just saying. All right, so I love that you guys are talking Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Foursquare, all that jazz. I'm a Redditor. You guys, is anybody else a Redditor? Anybody else on Reddit? Rock on. Now the mic's working. Woohoo! So I'm on Reddit. Where's that Reddit in December of 2011 served 2 billion page views. Are you guys getting any interest on that? Are you putting your players up for AMAs where people can ask any question to the person, such as Alexis Ohanian the other day had an AMA where I asked him, I put up a picture of an ace of clubs and I asked him, is this your card? Is that even in like kind of your windshield, your view?
I would say for us that's probably in that next tier of ideally if we had the bandwidth and enough people that might be something we'd consider, but for now that hasn't been a focus for us.
For us, it's not given our Major League Baseball advanced media. So I couldn't jump on a new platform without Major League Baseball advanced media doing it first. So everything that any Major League Baseball club does is done at a club level. So vendors, new platforms, they're approved at a league-wide level as opposed to at a club level. So that process, that's why we're not yet on Instagram, because it takes so long to build out everything for all 30 clubs. The Red Sox can't have it because every other club needs to have it. So we'll be there in probably 2015 and it'll be gone.
Do you have a curfew from MLBAM too?
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 a.m.
I'll be honest, we haven't touched Reddit at all either, and I think, again, to your points, it's just simply a bandwidth issue more than anything.
I just want to say, actually, Reddit, the Red Sox subreddit is awesome. It's growing. There are people from like all over the world who are on it, parts of Red Sox Nation. So if you want to, even yourself, just to check it out, it's pretty freaking cool.
He's a shareholder.
Great.
Well, and but to that point, like we were talking about earlier, I mean, these communities do pop up. When we first got on Facebook back 2007, 2008, there were companies out there saying, hey, we've got 100,000 Facebook fans that are all Celtics fans. We want to sell them to you and manage it for you. And I'm like, well, we can do that. Like, we're not going to pay someone to create these communities. And we went to Facebook and said, you know, and they helped us. There were tons of fan communities who were like Celtics fans of, you know, New York and all these different places. And so we went to Facebook and they helped us basically aggregate all those small communities, and right off the bat we had about 150,000 fans just put together by simply going out and picking all those fan communities and pulling them together, and Facebook was really helpful for us for that. But yeah, so that's kind of how that stuff works. So my guess is that Red Sox Reddit community will probably end up in, you know, under your control at some point if Reddit is willing to work with you guys.
Next question. Why don't we take this one?
Hi, thanks. I just had a quick question about how you deal with negative fans, especially in this market in particular. There are a lot of fans who can be very negative.
No.
Do you? I know. Can you believe it?
I don't know what you're talking about. Sports fans are not like that at all.
Not at all.
Unlike New York.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everyone's standing right here.
So do you have a particular strategy in dealing with negative fans, or have you been thinking about it? What are the discussions like about that?
Yeah, for us, we certainly appreciate both the positive and negative of our fan base. The Boston fans are so passionate and so knowledgeable, and that's what makes our organization so strong. So we love the positive and the negative. In terms of responding to them, I don't respond to negative comments a lot. 9 times out of 10, the negative fan comments are very reactionary. You know, Pedroia makes an error and 2 runs come in and we lose a game. People are going to go crazy and they're going to be negative and we hate Pedroia, we should trade him, and, you know, it goes on and on. So I don't ever respond to any of the negative fans, but we do keep a watchful eye on it. We have a weekly meeting with our senior executives, and I provide a pulse report. So we have the pulse of the nation. It includes content that comes into our fan services department, as well as what I'm seeing on social media. So I'll just provide a very quick high-level summary of some of the buzzwords, keywords, what the fans are saying. It's really important for our executives to hear that, and it's, I think, you know, nice to know that they do appreciate and want to hear that content. It's passed all the way up to the top. Whether or not we can take action on some of those items, we certainly will whenever we can. But they do always want to hear what fans are saying. So we may not be able to respond, particularly if it's based on play on the field. That's out of my control, certainly, and not so much you can do to respond to that. But if there's customer service issues where we're seeing negative comments, absolutely want to respond to those as soon as possible.
Yeah, and obviously on Twitter you can't delete someone's tweet if you don't like it, but we did set up kind of a policy for Facebook and other platforms where we can control it. So it's separating a negative comment from an obscene comment, or something that's attacking another user on your platform, or something that's just, you know, solicitation, hey, come watch our video on our website, whatever. So we do kind of reserve the right to delete really obscene and offensive comments, or anything that's attacking other people on the site, which you see a lot on Facebook. If it's mild, we're not gonna delete it. I try to be pretty lenient with that kind of stuff, but we want our Facebook page to be a place where fans can come and talk and interact with other fans. And if it's a really hostile environment, or if there's stuff that, you know, they don't want their 13-year-old son seeing on there, then that's the kind of stuff where we do try to monitor and delete it. But we post that policy on all of our pages so that people can be aware of it and see it, and we're not just censoring and deleting every comment that says Pats suck or, you know, trade whoever. So it's really the obscene side where we do monitor and delete. But we do, again, try to respond to stuff. If it's something that's under our control, if it is a customer service question, if it's, you know, I had a horrible experience of the game based on the parking situation or whatever, that kind of stuff we really do try to respond to across all the platforms.
I'd say we're slightly different. We typically don't respond to fans on Twitter at all. I think, again, from that standpoint, there's a couple different reasons. One, just the audience size that all these teams have. You could literally you could have somebody working around the clock 24/7 and they would never finish. But beyond that, I think just, you know, it's not the role, again, of the digital marketing, social media people to be responding in a customer service manner. I think you will see us at some point put our customer service reps on Twitter and responding to those things that come into our official account. But I feel like our official account really shouldn't be replying to individual people, good, bad, or indifferent. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. Again, risk-reward is a big issue there. And in terms of speaking for the organization, I think there's a lot of danger there. So it's an interesting space, and we've taken some flack for that, you know, from social media journalists and those types who, you know, for the most part, we've gotten plenty of love for the things we do well. But I think some people just have this expectation that the team and brand should be replying directly to everyone or wishing them happy birthday, those types of things. Megan, do we ever do that? Talk about that at all? But yeah, so I think we look at it slightly different. You know, if were I to leave and someone else take my job, they might think completely differently and go the other way with it. But that's kind of my philosophy on it.
In 2 weeks, I expect a happy birthday from all of your accounts.
Right.
Just an FYI, July 13th. Thank you. Actually, it's a really good question, and the only example I can recall, and I'm sure it will happen, you know, as people use Twitter increasingly, but it actually happened in Boston with the Boston Bruins. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it was the Bruins had to apologize basically for something they didn't do, but they had to issue a statement because of, you know, the horrible racist fan comments that were all over Twitter and ultimately ended up on Deadspin and aggregated and, you know, everywhere on the internet. If you don't know what it was Joel Ward, who's an African-American player for the Capitals, scored the game-winning goal, eliminated the Bruins, and Twitter just went crazy, and the N-word was used superfluously, which it never ever should be, and it caused a lot of ruckus across all media, really. But that's the only time I've ever seen a team have to come out and say, listen, we apologize, this is not reflective of us, and we're really sorry. So I don't know how often that would happen.
Yeah, and I have to wonder how much that's happened across all sports over the last few years and just never kind of bubbled to the surface either. I mean, I think no matter what platform you're on, you're going to have hate speech. That's just part of the deal. And so certainly, to your points, when we see that type of stuff on our we actually closed down our Facebook wall, so you can't actually directly just create a post on our Facebook wall. We'd never be able to manage that. We do monitor, the replies to our posts, but again, most of it is absolute nonsense to begin with. It's, hey, first, second, third, stuff that has nothing to do with it, spam, all those types of things. And so even just monitoring that is a crazy job that, again, you could spend all your time on. But again, for the most part, it's kind of ridiculous that the Bruins would have to apologize in that manner for some ignorant fans who are just using Twitter in a way that obviously the platform's not designed for, but shouldn't reflect on their team and their efforts.
Wait, you guys get those spam bots too? Like Kiki XXXX wants to offer you free porn? It's unbelievable. I think half of my 14,000 followers are probably bots. We have time for one more question.
Hi, I'm curious about how often you communicate with top management about social media reporting. Like, do you build reports quarterly? How do you communicate with them? All the tools that you use to measure your social media.
I just recently started. I send a weekly report every Friday to top management, which includes our year-to-date revenue from social media, our current standings in the league, some highlights of the week, our most viewed photo, our most viewed video, any initiatives or events we've participated in over the past week, and then sort of a quick snapshot of what's coming up next. I send that every Friday. It's a very top-level summary, but I think it's helpful to see a lot of times Twitter is where our top executives are, but they are not on there all the time. So I think it's an important reminder. You mentioned earlier it's harder to monetize and kind of show the value of some of the things you're doing, but for them to see, a picture, June was Calling All Kids Month at Fenway Park, and we did player meet and greets via Twitter, and we brought 20 kids down every weekend in June for people to meet players before the games, and just kind of showing them these pictures and look at, this was done via Twitter. It's pretty cool. They got to meet a player. You see all of the families who then shared those photos. Just little things like that, reminders, as well as the revenue numbers, are important.
I was just similar, and I think the ownership and high-level management is a good question to somebody else's point of when you get on certain platforms. For us, the Kraft family is very pro-social media and pro-doing new things and trying new things, so we are more encouraged to jump on things first, to jump on Pinterest when it's new and see how it goes, and if it doesn't work, then we can take it down. So they're very encouraging of that, so I don't have to quite justify things as much to them, but we'll send a monthly report with what was successful, what wasn't, what we're working on, different ideas, tossing things around, and we do quarterly meetings to update a larger group of those high-level management of what we're doing, so that they're aware, because it also helps, again, not to go back to the monetization, it helps if our salespeople know what we're trying to do or our different social media ideas so that they can build those into those future contracts. So we try to keep people updated without bogging them down every day with, this was the best tweet today or whatever.
Since we're talking about reports and upper management, I would say that we probably aren't producing mood graphs as much as trying to give people an overall sense of the health of the ecosystem, because I think there's a lot of signal-to-noise ratio. So the reports I do, I try to make them pop, and just, really curating the content that we have there, making sure our influencers are getting recognized in real time.
Nobody yet?
The convergence between what we're trying...
Bingo, somebody.
Somebody, please.
Right?
Yes, I mean, honestly, our management, whether it's our CMO, Sean Sullivan, our team president, Rich Gotham, are obviously pretty dialed into what we do in social. They're not asking for daily reports. I think they do keep track of just the overall numbers, kind of where we stand in the league, those types of things. They've allowed me a lot of freedom to go out and speak at conferences and kind of put our brand out there. And demonstrate ourselves as a leader in the space, and I spend a lot of my time, honestly, reading most days, trying to keep up with what's happening in the social media landscape, and obviously from a digital marketing standpoint, kind of what the leading brands are, what they're doing, and making sure that we're staying ahead of that, because I think it's become very important to us to be in that space, and it's something I take a lot of pride in, is trying to keep us on top of this stuff, and obviously all the teams in this city, just given, again, we talked about the dovetailing between sports and social media, it's so natural. Mm-hmm. It's really important for us, and I think in the Bruins, we're here, they'd say the same thing as well. So certainly it's important to them. They're not checking on it on a daily basis, but they're dialed into it and they want to know.
We actually have time for one more question, and I saw that dude in the blue had been raising his hand and didn't get to ask, so.
I tweeted my question, actually. How do you guys beta test new methods and networks? Like, well, do you tend to try to experiment yourself, or do you go more towards the where people are or where you see other companies and trends going?
Well, as far as just joining a new platform, I usually join first personally just so I can see what the user interface is like and see if it makes sense to me. Obviously, before I'm going to put our brand out there, I want to know how it works and make sure that the user experience is going to be good. But we haven't really pioneered new platforms. You know, we try to be first once they are kind of up and coming and somewhat established, but I wouldn't say we've been on anything first.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been good about trying to get to those platforms when they launch and they start gathering steam. Like, I'll say back in January, really Pinterest had not been on my radar. I was at a conference in Las Vegas, and a few brands started talking about it in their presentations. And I said, all right, well, if it's being talked about in this kind of venue and we don't have a presence there, we probably should at least have a presence there. If for no other reason than, hey, the Celtics are on Pinterest, and if you're interested in following us there, there's a way to do it. And then it's at that point, it's probably impossible to have a strategy before you get there. You really do have to just, a lot of trial and error, get there, see how it works, and then start coming up with ways where, how does this make sense for our fans to use it? How would they interact with us? And how is it going to be something where it's worth our time to spend there?
The MLBM response, but in terms of doing unique content, giveaways, things like that, just trial and error. We've had some events that we've hosted at the ballpark that haven't been huge successes for us in terms of driving tickets, but we've done things that have been great digitally. We had a 100th anniversary fan mosaic. Over 10,000 fans submitted a photo to be part of a mosaic for the Fenway Park's 100th anniversary. That was something I was really eager to do for this year, and just kept pushing to get it approved. So trial and error, kind of seek out the few big initiatives that you want to get done within a season, and then always just trying new things based on a upcoming series or homestand, things like that.
Before we conclude, I'd like to say the word paradigm, because I saw the tweet up there.
Is it on the board?
There you go. Buy me something at Amazon. No, I'm kidding.
Did
anyone
get bingo?
I think that concludes our sports and social media panel. Thank you all for joining, and thanks to our panelists.
Thanks, guys.
You can follow us all on Twitter, and you can follow all the teams on Twitter, obviously. There's going to be a 30-minute break in the lobby, and then the Building Brands Through Social Media panel will take place at 3:45. Thanks, guys.